So you look at Patty Duke's acting chops in the late 60s, early 70s. She said in her book she was suffering from mental illness. And what's kind of weird, she would take on a role like this because this kind of projects her character as either being mentally ill or totally delusional, because it really doesn't show her as the most positive character ever on Night Gallery. So today we'll be quoting from David Jewell's great WordPress articles about Night Gallery. And of course, it has to be the very, very, middle of the road, the Diary. Now, the Diary was season 2, episode 8, which originally aired Remembrance Day week in Canada and the States. Now, written by, of course, former Twilight Zone creator, and he was the main writer of the first segments of Night Gallery, Rod Serling, directed by the great William Hale, with Patty Duke Aston as Holly Schaefer, the very underrated David Wayne as Dr. Mill, and movie star fail, as they say. She was a movie star in this. She was playing a failed movie star, Virginia Mayo as Carrie Crane. It also has a young Lindsay Wagner as the nurse in the what they call the final twist segment. Now in this one, Holly Schaefer, Patty Duke, is a TV gossip columnist, sort of like Luella Parsons, who in recent broadcasts has savagely and delightfully reported on the alcohol-fueled misadventures of faded star Carrie Crane, played by Virginia Mayo, who was herself a star in such films as White Heat some 20 to 25 years before. She intrudes on Holly's New Year's Eve party at her high-rise to deliver a gift in the form of a diary. It's a very weird situation. It looks to be like a drunk midget dressed in a New Year's frock walking around looking for alcohol. Pretty freaky. Now, from the privacy of her bedroom, the two exchange harsh words and Carrie leaves. Holly opens a diary and is astonished to find the first entry already written for January 1st in Holly's own handwriting. One thing written is, "Can't shake that miserable disquiet over Crane's suicide." Eventually, there is a commotion among the guests in the living room, and Holly emerges from the bedroom to find them congregating in horror near the open balcony window. Peering down to the pavement, Holly sees that Carrie Crane has jumped to her death. The next morning, New Year's Day, her boyfriend Jeb, played by Robert Euro, opens a diary and finds an entry already in it for January 2nd, again in Holly's handwriting. It says the phone was out of order and she missed being able to appear on her show that evening. After returning to her apartment later, she picks the phone up from the living room to carry it in the bedroom when she trips and falls, breaking it. At Jeb's advice, she eventually sees a psychiatrist, Dr. Mill, played by, again, David Wayne, one of my most underrated actors of all time. Incidentally, she is missing her show in order to see him, so both things in today's diary entry have now come true. He suggests that she may be clairvoyant, telepathic, and thinks she may be writing her visions down in a diary with no recollection of doing so. But the Patty Duke character is playing this. She's too self-aware, and she scoffs at this. Before leaving, she picks up the diary and sees an entry for the next day. It says that Jeb, her man, is dead. Hysterical, she rushes to his office and discovers from his secretary that Jeb is left on a last-minute business trip to San Fran. In the next scene, Dr. Mill is visiting Holly in her apartment and says he called Jeb and told him to come back immediately to be with her, and on his way to the airport, he was killed instantly in a car crash. There's no next diary entry, which convinces Holly that she won't live until tomorrow. So you're asking the audience to believe that a diary that is cursed is writing in the person's own handwriting and making the person read it. It'd be much simpler to basically, the whole concept, you have to have a disbelief. Now, this would work in a House of Mystery or Witching Hour segment in DC comic books, but it kind of fails here because Patty Duke doesn't come across as a stupid person. Why did she just throw away the diary? Okay, I would have done that. If the diary's talking to me, he said, I don't fucking believe that. Burn the diary. She doesn't even, that would have been a great scene if somebody would attempt to burn the diary and it wouldn't burn. There's missing scenes here. It seems like there's something missing. Now, eventually, we find her in a grim lockdown psychiatric sanitarium. We hear Holly's voice calling for Dr. Mill. When he arrives, a new nurse on duty, Lindsay Wagner, of course, a Bionic woman, very luminous, and I met her a few years ago, asked her about the episode. She said she tended to agree with me. There was like a whole bunch of juxtaposition should have been added. He tells him she's been calling for him for quite some time. As Mill goes to see Holly and she is raving, apparently quite insane. she's been asking for a pen. The doctor says she has to be committed and specified she be given no sharp objects. Now, the timing of her requesting to be committed was just after she saw the blank diary entry and concluded it foretold her death. She now thinks if he writes on that page that nothing will happen to her and that she won't die. He eventually goes to the nurse to retrieve a pen and explains to her, because she's new on the ward, that they've been giving Holly a pen every day for the last 5 years, the time which she's been confined to the asylum. Now, that twist ending is good. But like I'm saying, the diary itself is the evil part of this episode. Again, if you tried to burn it, it wouldn't burn. We know it's, it's evil or something put together. Now, Jewel kind of agrees with me. He says the segment doesn't have quite the bite or pack quite the punch that it could have, mainly due to the twist ending, taking too much time to think about, rather than just having a visceral impact. Additionally, Serling's script throws in a fair amount of early 70s slang that doesn't exactly jibe with the typical long rhetorical flourishes, and simply gives Patty Duke's Holly too much dialogue to work her way through. Now, we all know that John Astin was on several episodes of Night Gallery, and he was a great contributor to the series, especially his episode with Phyllis Diller, where he's sentenced to hell. Like, he's sentenced to hell twice in the series. One was Hell's Bells, where he's sentenced to have a bummer time in the afterlife with a bunch of tourists showing their slides and an old farmer talking endlessly. But Patty Duke, with all her mental health problems, she's always been a great actress to me. She's done a lot of parts. But because of her mental illness, I think it was very dangerous for the producers and showrunners to ask Patty Duke to do this, because I deal with mentally ill people in my own family, and they're okay to a certain extent, but they will have a turn or a change. Now, casting Virginia Mayo as the suicidal former top-flight actress seemed to me like, that was an insult to Virginia Mayo. But Virginia Mayo did a lot of good parts, and she takes a role where basically she's kind of humiliating herself in quite a bit. Nowadays, with old actors from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they're on television or big screen movies, they're not used like that. So I find that's a failure as well, because I recognize her right away because I was a big fan of her film noir movies she was in, and it just seemed kind of condescending to her character. And a lot of people, like in Scott Skelton's book about Night Gallery, the anthology, he takes a look on every episode. He talks about that a little bit, and I would check out Scott Skelton's book. I know it's probably out of print in certain jurisdictions, but it gives a better indication of why this episode could have been much better. Because David Wayne hits out of the park, ladies and gentlemen. He's always been a great character actor. This would have been good as like kind of a there's like a little bit in certain scenes are good. There's like a Columbo feel to it, if that makes any sense. So I give this 2.5 stars out of 4. One for Patty Duke and one for David Wayne. And seeing Lindsay Wagner, I've always had a crush on her. Probably one of the most best natural beauties of all time. So if you like what you're doing here with our Night Gallery reviews and podcasts, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.